This important event is a cornerstone in promoting the exploration, development, production, and sustainable utilization of oil and gas resources in East Africa. As we navigate the evolving global energy landscape, Tanzania remains steadfast in its commitment to leverage natural gas as transitional fuel, supporting industrialization, transportation through compressed natural gas, and ensuring access to clean cooking energy for our people and for the industries. In line with our national energy strategies, we are accelerating efforts to transit from traditional biomass cooking methods to modern and clean alternatives such as natural gas, liquefied petroleum gas, and electricity. This transition is crucial for enhancing public, mitigating environment in order to address the issue of environmental degradation and fostering energy efficiency across our communities.
Petroleum will definitely provide the much needed gas as an alternative source of energy to the rudimentary use of biomass that has led to high deforestation rates and caused health challenges in women and children. Advancing the joint development of our energy resources will therefore enable us to achieve the intended goals of integration with the aim of achieving economic, social, and political integration. This will enhance competitiveness through increased production, trade, and investment in the oil and gas sector. Therefore, as East African partner states, we should place strong emphasis on cooperating in joint exploration and development of the energy resources found within the community and to promote investment in the sector.
Kenya has restructured its petroleum exploration blocks to align with the global best practices and our legal frameworks. As a result, we have identified 10 highly prospective blocks, selected based on geoscientific data that will be available for Kenya's first licensing round, launching by September 2025. This presents a unique opportunity for investors to explore our hydrocarbon potential through a transparent and merit-based process. These blocks are strategically located in the Lamu and Anza basins in the coast of the country.
Our vision is to create a wealth and enhance competitiveness through a strategic development of the petroleum sector. By harnessing our nation's vast natural resources, we aim to unlock remarkable investment opportunities that will drive growth and prosperity for Somalia and the entire East Africa region. It is very hard to believe that Somalia is now a volunteer for oil and gas exploration. Because of the hardships we have undergone, some may hard to believe that we are at this stage. Ladies and gentlemen, in February 2020, Federal Government of Somalia took a significant step towards developing the petroleum sector by erecting the petroleum law and establishing the Somalia Petroleum Authority, SPA, a regulatory authority to regulate petroleum operations. This pivotal move outlined the legal, regulatory, and institutional frameworks for petroleum investment and explorations in Somalia.
The East Africa region stands at the dawn of a new era where sustainable energy development will define the future of our environment, economies, and societies. As such, our path forward must clearly balance growth and sustainability, balance innovation with responsibility, and the needs of today with the aspirations of tomorrow. The theme of this conference reflects the reality we are facing today. On one hand, we must address climate change concerns that demand changes in our daily lives, including the energy sources we rely upon. On the other hand, we have social and economic needs of our people that require energy and financial resources to address. One potential solution to this challenge is the development of our region's available resources, including petroleum. Nevertheless, it is clear that we have the collective obligation to strike a balance between sustaining the needs of our people today and ensuring that we do not compromise the ability of the future generations to meet their needs. I think you'll agree with me that energy is a key driver of development, because energy consumption is used as a yardstick to measure society's level of development. However, as it stands now, Sub-Saharan Africa has a very low energy consumption compared to other regions like America, Asia, and Europe. And it is therefore crucial to explore our energy potential and find the best ways to harness and use our resources to empower our people to prosper. East Africa is endowed with significant energy resources, including an active petroleum system. Natural gas has been discovered in Tanzania, as we heard, oil in Uganda, Kenya, and South Sudan, methane in Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, and geothermal resources in Kenya and Tanzania, just to mention a few. At the same time, our regional energy demands keep growing, driven by many initiatives that we are taking to develop our economies through industrialization and rural electrification. And to overcome growing energy demand to benefit our people, there is need to effectively utilize all our energy resources, including petroleum, in order to fill or close the energy deficit for accelerated development. We cannot avoid transitioning to cleaner sources of energy, as it is a crucial strategy for decarbonization. However, investments in renewable energy are both capital intensive and costly, and require specialized skills to operate and manage. And it is estimated that Africa needs between $1 and $2 trillion to meet the clean energy transition targets by 2030. In response, our countries are implementing policies and programs to encourage investment in renewable energy, as indicated by the current status in Tanzania, where renewable sources now take the lead in the energy mix. And given that the petroleum resources are locally available, but facing limited investment capital, I think it makes sense for African countries to develop them now as a foundation towards energy transition. And in order to accelerate this process and attain sustainable development goals, we suggest that a public-private partnership model should be pursued, but this will have to be underpinned by a favorable investment environment in our countries.
Energy Week 2024.
I want to welcome everybody to this city, Cape Town, to Africa. Many call it Africa. We call it home. Welcome home.
Starting with you, Makta, I want to get a sense from you. I mean, we've seen a number of renewable energy programs being rolled out on the African continent, but even at that, we haven't seen the uptake that we would like to see. Even in my home country, renewables currently account for less than 10% of the supply on our national grid. How do you see the private sector playing a more active role in terms of investment, and what do you see as some of the challenges that have prevented a bigger uptake in renewable energy investments on the continent?
Renewable energy is part of the story, but part of the story is not linked to renewable energy. I think that we are currently working towards accelerating. I think that we are in an historical moment, and I think that this meeting will be certainly having a declaration will be as important as the Yamoussoukro declaration that you have in air transport, or the Bamako declaration that was held by the head of state on the health sector. We are looking at the three components of electricity production in Africa. We have generation, you have transmission, and you have distribution. And I think that if we want to reach our targets, we need to work on these three segments. On generation, I think that we have turned the corner, and I think that countries like Nigeria and other countries have shown that generation is now mainly done by the private sector. Now, the private sector is producing, but the main constraint from what I hear from them is the transport and distribution of such electricity. So transport lines are insufficient in Africa. We know that. It's a country that has the lowest kilometer of transmission, but the private sector is not yet involved as it should be and it could be in financing this very expensive asset, which is transmission. The second one is distribution. A lot of the distribution companies are undercapitalized, are not in a good financial situation, and are therefore not able to invest in operation and maintenance, which is so important. That's why actually a lot of the power outage you have in Africa are not linked often to production. They're often linked to distribution. The network is not robust enough to be able to distribute it. So what can we do to improve the quality of the distribution companies? I would like to say that we have a time where we can change the paradigm. We need to have more investment equity. I will suggest that we open the capital of the distribution companies and we make it public. In effect, we need to think about a way to take the distribution company and take them to stock exchange. For me, that would be having many effects. First, it will allow the domestic saving not to fly out of the country, but to be invested in productive assets. Secondly, it will allow the pension fund and institutional investors to invest in it. And the government can decide, depending on the decision of the head of state and the country, to give the majority or not to give the majority. But what is important is that we need to inject more capital in the distribution companies so that they can do what is needed. So these are the three elements, and I think that we are seeing some movement in South Africa. They're currently discussing now the regulatory framework on how to bring transport, private sector investment in transport. Nigeria has been working also on this question, but a lot of other African countries. So I think that if we can take some of the discussion and try to see practically what we can do to be able to bring more private capital in transmission and more private capital in distribution, I think that we will be able to build on what is being done, has been done on generation and accelerating. On generation, you have two components. The second component is to continue helping the country to clean the matrix. For that, for the most polluting part of the matrix, they can use transition resources like gas to power to substitute for coal, to substitute for heavy fuel and all these very polluting source of electricity, while accelerating the production of renewable. And I think that we have a very good example, and I'm leaving to some of our colleagues and clients we are working with here who have been investing heavily in renewable, are showing opportunities which are before us, and we are ready. Lastly, I would like to say an announcement, Zafiri, which is a new fund that we put in place to finance the decentralized renewable energy. And I would like to thank Raj Shah and President Adesina, because we are working together, and it's a very new approach. All these companies that we met need equity. They don't have enough equity to invest in that sector. So we are putting together a fund of $1 billion to be able to finance this equity, where we will be taking a big part of the risk on the balance sheet of DFIs by taking the junior tranche, and we are receiving grant money from the foundation like Rockefeller or the foundation, the money from IDA and AFDB, and that we allow to get capital from those who are. And I would like to say, and President Tinubu, I would like to announce that yesterday you signed the first project in using this facility for Nigeria, where yesterday we signed for 70 million of mandate to support this decentralized renewable energy.
I think following on from President Tinubu's energy transition agenda, at the start of 2024, the NSIA and our coordinating Minister of the Economy actually conceptualized, developed, and operationalized a renewable energy platform called Ripple. And what that platform does is essentially address the value dislocations in the energy access sector. And it does so by essentially being a developer, an investor, and an operator of a plethora of different kinds of projects, particularly around PV manufacturing, around franchising, which is essentially being a disco within a disco, and of course, diesel displacements. In the last 12 months, we have actually closed on 2 transactions, the first being a co-located solar PV farm alongside one of our hydro plants, as well as a PV manufacturing outfit in Lagos. As Mr. Diop mentioned, I think equity is the key in this regard, and I think this is what we offer through Ripple. But I think importantly, it's also important to put the focus on local currency capital mobilization. And the NSIA has done that through a facility called InfraCredit. And essentially what this facility does is to mobilize local currency capital to domestic infrastructure with a particular focus on distributed renewable energy. I'm proud to say that working with the World Bank and our coordinating Minister of the Economy, we're also essentially establishing a financial guarantor, not only for DRE projects, but for large-scale infrastructure projects, particularly on-grid projects, transmission projects, and so on and so forth. And so I think the focus of our platform would be not only brownfield, cash-producing propositions, but also the very, very early stage at-risk development propositions. I think it's only if we engage within that portion of the value chain that we will begin to make a difference.
What are some of the challenges you have faced developing projects on this continent?
We embark in a strategy where we want to do both, and the renewable projects in Africa, I will be honest with you, yes, we have today 1.4 gigawatt that are already operated or being built, but it's not an easy journey. And I think there are 2, I would say, main challenges. I've already said that. The first one was mentioned by my friend of IFC, it's the transmission system. You know, when you want to build a renewable farm, you need to connect it to the grid. And it's a challenge in many countries, but especially in Africa. And then you need to transport this electricity. It's obvious that today, when you have a distribution company which is managing both transmission and distribution, it's difficult in terms of huge capital to attract. I was discussing the issue yesterday with one president of Mozambique, where we have a large hydro project. And I told him we cannot start the hydro because we don't see the transmission line behind it. And frankly, you can attract financial international investors, private investors on production like us on hydro, but you could also attract international and private investors on infrastructure. A transmission line is an infrastructure, but it has to be managed, as you said, by attracting more capital. Otherwise, I'm afraid this bottleneck will remain. The second one, which is, I would tell you, even more important, is to be able to have a bankable PPA. What does that mean? But even my friend of IFC, they like to make profits like us. If you want to establish, when you are a renewable developer, you want to go to financing, to banks, commercial banks, which all have a lot of commitments to develop renewables, green energy, plenty of hundreds of millions of dollars. What they want to be sure is that you need to secure the revenues of the project. It seems obvious, but we know that in this continent, they might have some difficulties of payments, local payments. So we are asking for some form of guarantees. Guarantees, in fact, when you look to the project, there are not a lot of defaults. It's just that the financial institution, they want some guarantees. Of course, we turn to the states, but the states, quite often, the IMF tell them, don't give guarantees, The IMF is a brother of some cousin from IFC. And I think so if it's not the state which can give this guarantee, we need to have, and I think the World Bank CEO was there, but his representative IFC is there, we absolutely need to have in place an instrument of guarantee for being able to develop all this PPA. And the international financial institutions are discussing it for years. Each time I'm participating to a conference, it's now time to action. And I hope that this M300 that you launched today will be the opportunity to really have instruments. The World Bank, the MEGA, etc., but we need to have it. Because otherwise, honestly, I'm afraid we cannot put it at scale. And the potential in the continent, not only on solar, but also on hydro, is huge. So this question of guarantee and financial institution, or whoever it is, we should not be afraid. We don't face many defaults. It's just a question of comfort.
Could you tell me a bit about your journey as well in terms of what you see as a challenge as an investor in Africa in the power sector, and in particular the role you feel guarantees play in de-risking these projects for you as an investor?
The challenges we saw are the same challenges raised. The first big challenge is the grid. I think it's about time for the IPP developer to start investing in the grid. My company, AMI Power, have decided to pursue this route. And we want to discuss it with potential clients in Africa because they are unable to do the grid. We see generation is easy, but you need to evacuate that generation. How can you evacuate it if there is no grid or there is poor grid? Some countries like Morocco have done a great job by investing in the grid. Egypt have done a great job in investing in the grid. And that have eased the job for developer to start building generation. I think some of my other friends in different countries, I see many great presidents of Africa here, one need to start opening that grid for the private sector. It will help them. It will create another avenue for generation. The second challenge we see in some countries is the convertibility of the currency. In our principle, we always need to be paid in a currency of convertibility, dollar or euro. Some countries like South Africa, because you are able to borrow in rand, you hedge your risk on the currency. Morocco, you borrow in dirham because you hedge yourself in currency. Other countries, we cannot accept it. It has to be convertible currency. and has to come with a bankable documentation for the project, like was raised by our friend. The bankability of these documents are important because we all go to the lenders, and the lenders will take minimum risk and pass the risk on you as a developer. From our experience, we believe the challenge as well is the permitting and dealing with the different local organizations. Therefore, one of the suggestions I've made to some of the friends in the government in African countries is to have a one-stop shop where we as a developer deal with all the required permits, be it land, be it taxes, be it whatever permits or dealing you need to have with a government agencies, a one-stop shop. So the investor doesn't waste time running around. It's there. You go and deal with all these issues. We've seen this, for example, in Togo, a small country where they have done it remarkably very well. You go to one-stop shop, all the issues are solved, and you move on. We also believe, which makes life easy for us in the community we work on, is to partner with that community. By that, I mean we invest in their needs. We build clinics, we build school, we hire their young men and women, we train them, we develop to become part of the team who operates this plant. And that community partnership have eased life for us.